Good evening. They're images of fear and desperation. Afghan men, women, clutching their babies and small children, all running for their last chance to flee a life under the Taliban. The chaotic scenes played out at Kabul airport. US Air Force planes overrun by those seeking asylum. It paints a picture of the terror felt by those left behind. And a warning, some people may find the images in this story distressing. Amelia Adams begins our coverage.
A final frantic bid for freedom. Hundreds of Afghans chasing a US Air Force carrier, climbing, clinging to the undercarriage. Dozens perched on the landing gear doors. A desperate and for some deadly attempt. 3 men fell to their deaths. 3 more were run over by jets and 2 were shot dead by US troops trying to control the stampede. The airport, controlled by the US military but surrounded by Taliban, became a beacon of hope for escape. Locals scaling the walls, moving targets for militants. Afghans begging American forces, take us with you. I have no job, this man says. We left our homes, we have no food. Amid the chaos, these were the lucky ones. 640 Afghan refugees storming a US military cargo plane intended for embassy personnel. Crammed in and refusing to budge. Women, children, a toddler drinking a bottle, some looking terrified, others relieved. The crew agreed to fly them to safety in Qatar. Afghanistan collapsing as the world watched in dismay, evoking comparisons to America's withdrawal from Vietnam.
I stand squarely behind my decision.
A defiant President Biden cut short his summer vacation to defend his handling of America's longest war.
Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. It was never supposed to be creating a unified, centralized democracy. Our only vital national interest in Afghanistan remains today what it has always been, preventing a terrorist attack on America's homeland.
Admitting the speed of the Taliban victory caught him by surprise and blaming the Afghan government and security forces.
Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
The Commander-in-Chief also pointed the finger at a former White House resident, Donald Trump, who made the original deal with the Taliban to withdraw US troops by May this year.
Honouring the agreement because the other option, he says, was a return to all-out warfare.
I will not pass this responsibility on to a fifth president.
The Pentagon has deployed another 1,000 troops to help evacuate Americans from Kabul, the press briefing turning personal as an Afghan reporter was overcome with emotion.
They took off my flag. This is my flag. And they put their flag. Everybody is upset, especially women. Where is my president, former President Ghani?
And from Capitol Hill, bipartisan backlash.
Every terrorist around the world are cheering the defeat of the United States military by a terrorist organization.
For a president who campaigned on foreign policy, experience and strength, losing to the Taliban is a disaster. For those left behind, it's agony, chaos and uncertainty. In Washington, D.C., Amelia Adams, 9 News.
As the people of Kabul struggle to process the last 48 hours, there's a sense of dread that the worst is yet to come. Taliban fighters have flooded the streets almost 2 decades after they were driven out by US troops.
Armed to the teeth, Taliban fighters piled into cars and utes and old US Humvees. After 20 years of war, they took over Afghanistan's capital with barely a shot fired. CNN reporter Clarissa Ward had no trouble getting close to various Taliban units as they moved through the city.
This is a sight I honestly thought I would never see. Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy compound.
The Taliban are clearly in charge, running roadblocks, feared fighters happy to pose with locals, while others hammed it up for shots in the gym inside the president's palace. They have a reputation for being ruthless, but at the moment they seem intent on trying to win over locals. Everything is under control. Everything will be fine, this Taliban commander said. No one should worry.
Alhamdulillah.
Another fighter dismissed fears of revenge attacks. Since yesterday, we have proved nothing will happen, he said. We give an assurance to everyone they will be safe. But Afghan MP Farzana Koshai speaks for many women, saying she fears the Taliban will strip women of their rights.
I'm afraid of myself, my life, and my freedom to work and my freedom to speak up.
This Taliban commander says women would not be prevented from going to schools and universities.
The women can continue their lives and we will not say anything for them. They can go to the school, they can continue their education.
But a strict version of Islamic law appears inevitable.
Covering their faces as well.
Cover the face?
Yeah.
So you mean niqab?
Niqab.
Why do they have to cover their face?
Because it is in our Islam.
Is it in Islam, though, that you have to wear a niqab?
This 22-year-old's father recently died fighting the Taliban.
Just I'm with my little sister. We are living at home. That's why I'm afraid from everything. It's the big problem. This is the big problem for us.
And a looming problem for the rest of the country. The Afghan flag might be still flying over the presidential palace, but at the front gates, it's the Taliban firmly in control. Mark Burrows, 9 News.
Nine's US correspondent Amelia Adams is in Washington, D.C. for us. Amelia, the political fallout for the Biden administration is just beginning.
It certainly is, Peter. There is a lot of anger and embarrassment here over how this has played out on the world stage. Joe Biden has spent months telling leaders America's back after the Trump era, but tonight, big questions about US intelligence, how the Biden administration could so poorly misjudge the situation on the ground in Afghanistan and the consequences of that. With warnings terror groups could now regain strength, China and Russia have indicated they are open to recognising and working with the Taliban, facing the first major crisis, international crisis of his presidency. Joe Biden did not take questions today. He has left the White House, returning to Camp David, where he is on summer holidays. Peter?
Amelia, thank you.